Wherever civilization has carved out a moment of leisure, from the sand-swept courts of ancient Egypt to candlelight drawing rooms and Victorian parlors, there have been games. Board games in particular have followed us like shadows. They mirror our ambitions, our morals, and our myths. There's something quietly magical about the tabletop. Through dice and tokens, we give structure to uncertainty. We create small worlds to better understand the larger one. And in this way, board games don't merely entertain us, they make us more human. In early America, board games were telling a story of a growing country. They showed the slow transformation of our national values. They were quiet sermons delivered through cardboard and chants. And if we look closely, we'll see how these games didn't just reflect American thought, they helped shape it. So let's begin in 1843 with The Spiral Path to Salvation. The Mansion of Happiness was a popular form of entertainment among youth in early America, but it wasn't just a game, it was a moral journey. Players, typically children, traveled a winding path towards an allegorical heaven. Each space on the board represented a virtue or a vice. The game promotes Christian values like temperance and piety. Land on honesty and you advance 6 spaces. Fall into drunkenness and you find yourself at the whipping post. The full rules can be found online. This structure might feel familiar, and it should. The Mansion of Happiness draws inspiration from Moksha Patam, or what many of us know today as Snakes and Ladders. In its Indian origins, the game was based on Buddhist and Jain philosophy. Ladders representing virtues carried you towards liberation, while snakes, standing in for vices, pulled you back. I would like to note here that there were more snakes than ladders, a design choice meant to teach that it is easier to fall than to rise. When the game arrived in the West, its sacred geometry was preserved but subtly rewritten. The ladders became Christian virtues, the snakes now renamed vices. The journey remained moral, but the destination was no longer released from the cycle of rebirth. It was the entrance to a metaphorical heaven. The board, repainted for a Protestant America, taught that righteousness brings reward, while missteps, punishment. The game was meant to discipline the adolescent soul. Fast forward to the early 20th century and the spiral remains, but the sacred has been replaced with the secular. The game of life reimagines the journey not as a path to heaven but to wealth. Its goal: retire with the most money. The virtues of Mansion of Happiness, like temperance, piety, and sincerity, are nowhere to be found. Instead, players navigate promotions, insurance payouts, and stock investments. The American dream has shifted. It was no longer a moral pilgrimage, but now a financial one. So, what happened? This period in American history saw a turning inward, towards individual success, economic self-determination, and a growing belief in the market as a moral arbiter. In the world of life, success isn't about virtue, it's about accumulation. The board teaches that the best life is the richest one, and yet, not all games played along. In 1904, Elizabeth Magie created the Landlords game. Her intention was clear: to critique the unchecked greed of capitalist monopolies. The game showed how one player, by acquiring land and raising rents, could bankrupt others. It was a lesson in systematic inequality, a warning. But that's not the version you know. The game was eventually repackaged and stolen by Charles Darrow, who sold it to Parker Brothers as Monopoly. The critique was erased, the message inverted, and what began as a cautionary tale became an aspirational fantasy. Where the Landlords game asked, "What happens when the system fails the many?" Monopoly answers, "Win the system before it breaks you." During the Depression, this appeal was understandable. When real money was scarce, the idea of becoming a paper tycoon was seductive. Monopoly offered a theater of power, a dress rehearsal for dominance. So what are these games teaching us? From Mansion of Happiness to life and the Landlords game to Monopoly, we can trace a cultural arc, one that bends away from the moral instruction and towards the material aspiration. Where once children learned that gratitude leads to joy, they now learn that success means owning everything. The game is the message, and maybe that's the most important lesson of all. Our games don't just entertain us, they encode our values. They whisper what kind of world we're building. So the next time you open a board game, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? And who taught it first?